The Shop to the Apartment. Written and read by W.P. Thrift. You can find me at Lantis Armstrong on Twitter. Chapter 9. Seafood and the Supernatural. It had been a winding, roundabout trek through Cattailville, but Lantis finally had the apartment in his sights again. He had taken a scenic route in hopes of losing all those maniacs that were trying to kill him, but more importantly, he didn't want his boss to know where he had gotten off to, and he really didn't want to run into her. She knew where he lived, so he didn't feel safe making his way home, but with nowhere else to go, he was once again arriving here after dark. Lantis spotted a car pulling up near his apartment complex as he hobbled up the sidewalk. It was a nice car, so it looked completely out of place in this neighborhood. If someone's front bumper wasn't being held together by rope, then they very likely weren't from around here. And so, it surprised him all the more when he saw Radix getting out of the passenger seat. Radix said his goodbyes to Amy, and she nearly returned the gesture, but suddenly felt far too self-aware and froze up, and ended up driving off without saying a word. The two of them had gone down the stairwell towards the sub-basement, but there was a big bee down at the bottom, and it just didn't feel like moving, so they both decided to try again tomorrow. Radix was pumped for it, as Amy had said she would stop back by to pick him up around noon. "So you did become a male prostitute after all," Lantis said to him, limping up. "I thought that was just the desperation talking." "Nah, I wish," Radix replied. "The local pimp said I hadn't had all my shots, so I couldn't—" "Never mind that. Do you know who that was? Amy!" "Yay!" Lantis said. "Who's Amy?" "The librarian!" Radix nearly shouted, unable to control his giddiness. "So, some old crone?" Lantis raised a brow. "No, idiot! Don't you remember the trip to the library we took that one time? You met her then." Lantis shrugged. He didn't recall this happening in the slightest. "Well, whatever," Radix said. "Let's just say that things have been going great for me. So how are things with you? I see that you're still wearing the Circle M outfit, so guess that means you've gone back to work?" Lantis panicked and clawed at the shirt before tearing it off and tossing it to the side with all the horror etched on his face of someone who had been set on fire, desperately trying to remove burning articles of clothing. Lantis stomped on the Circle M shirt several times after tossing it off, grinding it down into the dirt next to the sidewalk. Evil spirits raised out of the shirt as it died. "I forgot I was wearing that," Lantis said finally. "My boss tricked me into coming back by kidnapping me and forcing me to come back. And then I was nearly killed by some guy with a gun." "You were nearly killed by some guy with a gun every time you went," Radix pointed out. "Yeah, but that never makes it any less stressful," Lantis shouted. They both headed back inside the apartment, careful to lock up after getting inside. Never can be too safe in this city. What they saw inside the apartment, neither of them could have anticipated. On the table, in front of the couch, was a full-course seafood meal. Lobster, crab cakes, buckets of endless shrimp, fish prepared a dozen different ways, most of them fried or baked. "Hey, guys!" Miranda called over to them. "You're just in time! Come dig in!" "You made all of this?" Radix asked. Lantis rushed the table, gagging from the pain rushing put his ankle through, but he fought past the pain and began shoving food down his gullet without question. Bowman was there as well, equally fast to snatch up and devour anything he could get his hands on. They both began fighting over a lobster that they had grabbed at the same time, Bowman pulling off the tail and Lantis getting everything else. "Ha! My piece is bigger!" Lantis declared, believing that he had won this contest. He searched around the lobster and could find no meat. "What the fuck is this shit?" Bowman sucked all the meat out of the tail and tossed it carelessly towards the carpet while going after something else. "Damn it, Bowman!" Peter yelled at him. "We both know that I'm going to be the one to have to clean up after everyone." "Then what's the problem?" Bowman asked him. Peter could have persisted with his point, but he knew that he was just wasting precious time that could be spent eating. So he got back to it before it was all gone. "Well," Miranda began, getting back to Radix's question. "Yes, I cooked and prepared it all, but the seafood belonged to you guys. I fished it all up out of your carpet. The traps were already set for me and everything." "Traps?" Radix asked. "Like lobster traps," Peter said. "Apparently, a fisherman's been sneaking into our apartment at night, sailing out across the great Carpet Lake Sea, and dropping trot lines and other traps out into the water. But we got to his hole before he could return to claim it." Radix took a seat on the floor next to the table. Bowman, Peter, and Miranda had the couch, and Lantis was on the floor with him. Not that anyone cared about anyone else's seating position, besides Miranda, of course, who was enjoying being snuggled up next to Bowman, no matter how dangerous that was while he was feasting. The meal came to an abrupt end when Sweeney entered the living room, wadded all the food up into a gigantic mush ball, and then began pushing the ball backwards down the hallway with his feet, like a dung beetle, back to his room, where he closed and locked the door to be alone with his meal. Nobody seemed particularly surprised by that, besides Miranda. Was that okay?" Miranda had to ask, her heart going fast from just having seen Sweeney in person for the second time. "That's why it's important to eat fast around here," Peter informed her. "Say, do I know you?" "No, I'm Miranda. Pleased to meet you, Peter," Miranda said, having heard his name before. Peter nodded, then asked, "Want to go out sometime?" Miranda was shocked by the abruptness of it, but mostly because she had never thought that it could be so easy to just casually ask someone out on a date. "Is that all I needed to do with Bowman? All this time?" Miranda asked herself. "Sorry," Miranda said, "but I'm spoken for, right, Bobo?" She tried to snuggle up to him, but he was too busy picking his teeth to notice. "Why's everyone staring at me?" Bowman realized everyone was looking at him. "I said I'm spoken for, right?" Miranda pressed. "Well, I don't know what you said," Bowman replied. Peter groaned, assuming that she was just trying to make up an excuse to let him down easy. It was just his luck with women. And on top of that, he was late for his next job because he had stopped to eat. He was going back to one of the hotels he had worked at tonight to continue tunneling under their parking garage. Not that the hotel was aware he was doing this, and he intended to keep it that way. Getting up from the couch, Peter banged his knee into the table 3 times while trying to walk around it and get out the door to head to work. "Fine, never mind," Miranda said. "I'll just go." She started to leave the apartment herself, but then Bowman asked, "So when will I see you again?" Hearing from Bowman himself that he not only wanted to see her again, but was looking for a specific time, it filled her heart with joy. It put a pep in her step the whole way home, making her completely forgive him for brushing her off just moments before. But just as she arrived back at her place, she realized, "Wait, dang it! I totally forgot to answer his question!" It was nice getting to wake up late in the apartment for a change, not having to wake up before dawn to race Peter to the van. Though Peter's stomping through the living room did wake Radix up, twice. First, when he was returning from his tunneling, covered in dirt, and then later when he was leaving again for his first job of the new day, still covered in dirt because he hadn't changed and just went to sleep in his work clothes. Also, frequently Radix would be awoken by Sweeney and Bowman snoring in their room, the reverberations from which likely keeping the surrounding neighbors awake as well. Lantis, as quiet as he could be, also woke Radix up when he slid the door open to the patio to go out there and have a smoke, and the stench of the smoke kept him awake until Lantis was done, as he still never closed the damn glass door when he was out there. Besides all that, Radix slept better than he had in a very long time. His first class wasn't until noon, but he'd always have to leave so damn early just to make the walk over there in time. Not that he was even planning on attending that first class today, as he and Amy had research to do and sub-basements to scope out. On the drive over there, Radix was worried that she would still be in her semi-catatonic state, which she used to tune out the rest of the world. But to the stark contrast of his expectations, she was quite the motor mouth the whole way over, telling him everything that she had discovered from her studies late into the night at home. This kind of stuff excited Amy, learning ancient, forgotten lore, then having someone she felt was intellectually capable of understanding the depth of impact uncovering this knowledge could have on humankind. "So, the thing about sacrificing a person," Amy said, "I think it comes down to 3 primary symbols. Part of this whole symbolism/symbology magic stuff. Never mind that. That's actually a whole other subject with its own breadth of study. The important bit is that I've sketched out the symbols needed to control Febribus down onto this." Amy handed Radix a triangle crudely carved out of wood. He flipped it over to glance at both sides, just to be polite. He didn't actually get what she was talking about, but he was trying to keep up. If it was important to her, he may need to remember it for later. The front of the carving had 3 symbols carved into it, and inked with something red. He had no idea what. The back of the wood carving was perfectly smooth. He handed it back to her. "Oh, I hadn't even mentioned yet," Amy continued. "You're not sacrificing the person's life, only their body. These symbols force a symbiotic relationship between Febribus and the host. And if the host's willpower is greater than hers, then you can control her powers. It's actually a far more crude method than you might think." "And what makes it, work?" Radix asked. "I don't know. There has to be a catalyst or something. That would be a good thing for us to look up today. Or actually..." Amy hesitated before speaking the next part, worried that he would be against it. "Would you be up for an all-night research session? I feel like we're getting really close to understanding this is all. But what I have needs to be cross-verified several times before any actual testing can begin." "Sure, that'd be fine," Radix agreed. "Great," Amy declared, thrilled that he saw things her way. "I've just begun to realize how many things I was mistaken about. So many passages I've misinterpreted, or maybe just translated wrong. It's the sections with ancient Hebrew that throw me off, you see. They don't use vowels in their language, or spaces between their words, so you just get a whole bunch of consonants slammed together and have to try and make sense of it." Yeah, that can be a problem," Radix agreed. "I didn't even see any books written in Hebrew, though." "There's thousands of books in that library. We haven't even started to scratch the surface here." Amy grinned with excitement. "I wonder, if I'm successful with this, do you think Alcyone would allow me to continue studying what she has in that library? Honestly, I don't think I'll ever be able to sleep easy again until I've read every book in there." That sounded excessive, even to Radix, but he could respect her passion. There was some pretty bizarre stuff in there, all believed to be lost to time. "You know, maybe I could start doing some translations of some of it," Radix thought out loud. "I will be needing to get a job at some point. This could take care of that problem. offering up some translated manuscripts to a publishing company. Now you're thinking, Amy said, glad to hear Radix was taking this serious enough to already be looking at it from the point of view of a professional level. This was the most alive Amy had felt in a long time, and she was both scared and embarrassed to admit that it was a lot more fun for her because she had someone to share in the experience with. They arrived on campus and went to put all their stuff down in the library before heading back out to the stairwell that would lead them down to Fabribus's prison. The Big B wasn't even there today, so it was clear sailing all the way down. Going down below the basement level, Amy could already see the bottom, and the door that would lead to the floor Fabribus was supposedly held. According to her books, she'd have been imprisoned here for the past 1,000 years. This college had been built right on top of her burial grounds, and the sub-basement built around her cage. Growing somewhat anxious, reality dawning on her that if there really was an ancient monster down here, she may have wanted to get Alcyon's permission before coming to get a look at it. She was about to ask Radix if this really was a good idea, when something in her pocket began to burn her. Crying out and stopping on the stairs abruptly, she reached into her pocket to pull out the wooden carving. She held it up for a second before it caught fire. She quickly let go of it, its ashes falling to the floor, the fire intense enough to disintegrate it. She beat the embers clinging to her hand off on her pants, then squeezed her hand tight with her other hand, afraid to even look at how badly burned she might be. "Are you okay?" Radix asked. "Never mind me! Look!" Amy hissed. While the wooden carving was gone, the symbols still remained, hovering, glowing in the air right where the carving had disintegrated. Out of curiosity, Radix had to ask, "Are you, certain that a catalyst was needed to activate this? It couldn't have just been the symbols by themselves," Amy said like it was obvious. "I mean, we would at least need a host, and we don't have—" Her words trailed off. She was about to tell Radix that the host couldn't be Mel, so he wasn't going to be sacrificed after all. But she had miscalculated. Her own ideology about people, that she was separate from them, not part of their lives or culture, had been the error in her calculations. She didn't think of herself as ever being there at all, but rather just a passerby, a spectator observing this bizarre experiment called life. But she was there, despite her ideas, and now that her brain began to race back over her notes, she met every qualification for a host. "But there still has to be a catalyst, right?" Amy asked in a hushed voice. Then her face snapped towards Radix, her eyes glowing white, and a toothy grin stretched unnaturally across her face, far too wide. The symbols had vanished from the air. She held up a hand, and Radix went flying back up the stairs, colliding with the wall where the stairs turned. "What a lovely thing to wake up to," Amy said, but it was not her own voice. Radix got back up, brushing himself off. "Let me guess. Fabribus, right?" He groaned loudly. "Of course this shit would happen! God damn it!" He drew out his hidden katanas, focusing up. "So, how about letting her go before I kick open your cell door and—" His words were cut short when he was telekinetically lifted and slammed back down into the stairs several times. The possessed Amy slinging him around with the faintest of gestures of one hand, her burnt hand with the symbol scorched into her palm's flesh. "Yes, of course this is what happens when, as you so ineloquently put it, you trifle in matters beyond your understanding," the possessed Amy said, tremendous amusement in her voice. Radix wanted to make a leap for her the second his feet touched the ground, but decided that he couldn't. There was no game plan after he reached her. He couldn't cut her. Maybe he could knock her out, but could he really? Maybe that wasn't even an option. The only other plan was to somehow get past her into the sub-basement and take Fabribus out from within there. Would that even break the hold? Fabribus could be a rotted skeleton by now, for all he knew, dead long ago. Spirit barely clinging to this world and just waiting for a host to move into. Of course, that may not be it at all. He wouldn't know until he got to her cell in the sub-basement. Getting slammed against a wall, Radix tried to kick off from it to sling himself down the stairwell, but got a sudden, overwhelming chill of vertigo as he looked down and saw just how far he would have to fall. He was not trained to deal with such bullshit, and so he freaked out and grabbed hold of the hand railing and ended up clinging to it instead, his feet dangling over nothing. The possessed Amy cracked up laughing at this.
"And here I was hoping you would be a hero," she said. "How lovely it would be to test my powers against a worthy opponent, to see just how rusty I've become."
Pulling himself back up onto the stairs, panting, Radix grabbed the katanas he had dropped at some point and put them away, then began slowly backing up the stairs, keeping his eyes on her.
"Go ahead, then. Flee,"
the possessed Amy told him.
"Consider your life my reward to you for your part in freeing my mind from that accursed prison."
Now running up the stairs, Radix soon emerged on the ground floor of campus, his heart pounding and mind racing. He nearly ran over to a nearby payphone to call the police and ask for their help. He quickly thought better of it, realizing that they would only arrest him and not help her at all. He needed to think clearly, but knew that he couldn't just stop. So he ended up jogging in place, looking like a loon to all the other students passing nearby, while he fretted over what to do. At last he thought of something. He ran to the library where they had thrown their stuff down, and was relieved to see Amy's car keys attached to her keychain, which she had thrown down earlier with the rest of her stuff. He grabbed them and ran back to her car. He was going to seek help from his pals. If there was more than one of them, someone might be able to get past Amy and get to Fabribus. If Amy was still there when he returned. If Fabribus's hold could be stopped. If he wasn't deluding himself into thinking that the situation was anything but hopeless. If. Too many unknowns. He pushed it all out of his mind and just drove. Police sirens in his rearview mirror already. Not that he was speeding, but rather the police had a sixth sense for knowing when he was nearby. That concludes Chapter 9 of The Apartment. Tune in every Tuesday for new chapters. If you would like to reach me, you can do so at Lantis Armstrong on Twitter. That's LANTISARMSTRONG. Thank you for tuning in, and we hope you'll join us again for next week's chapter, Bunnies and Psychics.